Bună seara! Aș vrea să vorbesc în engleză, că e mai ușor când I get excited about something. So I'm the founder of PaybyFace. I left Romania when I was 5 in '85, and I've returned last year in January after 35 years of America, and I decided to stay in about 5 days. So I've been working on my fintech. Last year, I came from a telco company, and before that in America, I worked for an insurance, one of the biggest insurance companies in America as a performance engineer and team lead. So when I found out about open banking and how all the banks are launching open banking APIs, all kinds of lights went off. And I designed PaybyFace. In 2017, there was almost 300 billion transactions, not monetary value, but actual transactions. And we spend a lot of time waiting to buy something. When you're waiting in line at the store, when you're paying for your coffee or ordering, you're always waiting in line to pay. After you're done eating at a restaurant. So there's a lot of waiting going on, and we want to make that faster. Next. We've come up with PaybyFace. Consumers obviously don't need to carry cash or credit cards anymore. Like we all know, the trend is moving to mobile payments. And we have a platform where merchants can choose to onboard to our system and upgrade their POS, their traditional POS systems, the swipers. They don't need those anymore. Some customer use cases, for example, when you're done eating at a restaurant, you don't have to ask, cash or card and wait another 15, 20 minutes for the person to come so you can swipe. You can just scan a QR code on the table, and that processes the payment instantly, and you can get up and go, kind of like Uber of taxis. You don't have to wait to pay. There's another use case that I really like is now with PaybyFace, we can safely and securely share your wallet. So how many of you have ever given out your card with your PIN to like your kids or your wife? Raise your hand if you've ever done that. Anybody? I'm sure you have. That's not allowed. With PaybyFace, you can share your wallet, basically your e-wallet. You can share it with a loved one or your children, and you can designate a time, a place, a geofence place, and a limit of how they're spending. And when they reach the location, they're basically using your digital e-wallet and their face recognition to process the payment on site without you ever giving your card or your PIN. Our IP status, we've been granted trademark with EU IPO for PaybyFace biometric payments. And we have paybyface.io and bankconnect.io. Next. Our strategy is to leverage open banking, the open banking landscape in Europe, where we're exposing APIs, and most banks have already launched in sandboxes with a September deadline for, I think, production ready, I believe, I'm not sure. But there's pressure to get this thing going, and so we've designed a prototype iOS app that I built myself. I have 20 years of engineering experience, and I can do full stack development on Android, iOS, AWS, Azure, all of it, and I'll get into that later. And so we're trying to get into the open banking APIs being launched and start working on a prototype. And it's all going to sit on our Bank Connect. This is basically our middleware, which is an API aggregation for all the banking APIs, because as a fintech, I don't want to integrate into 16 different APIs. I want one interface and let that thing integrate into all the APIs. And so we decided that's a need for us. Why don't we build it ourselves? So we also built Bank Connect, and it's AWS, Azure cloud architecture, fully automated CloudFormation templates for the entire architecture. I can launch a production-ready environment in 3 hours with all parameterized and nested templates, which I wrote myself. Next one. And so our funding request right now is to finish the Bank Connect. There's only one component left, which is kind of the brains, the actual processing algorithm on serverless Lambda functionality that's going to tie into the various APIs and start giving commands to the banking APIs for get my balance, process a payment, and so on and so forth. All the functionality that's coming with the open banking APIs. So we want to finish the mobile apps, the kitchen sink, B2C fintech, with face recognition component that I can then give out to other fintechs to embed into their applications, or I can embed that into banking apps directly, and then leverage the Bank Connect API aggregation portal to scale up to the rest of the fintech community. So we're asking for $500,000 to build this out. $375 for Bank Connect and $125 for the mobile app biometric side. Next. There was another thing in there that I want to mention. I recently pitched to VW and Audi Group in Hungary, and they forwarded me over to their innovation center in China, because China is innovating with face recognition payments and connected vehicles. And so we pitched the idea of creating a marketplace in connected vehicles, basically leveraging our same platform. So it's not just for shopping at a restaurant or going to Carrefour and paying with a selfie and a QR code. We can take our whole platform and put it in different various environments as a marketplace with biometrics and the API aggregation portal. So our revenue plans are to give the PaybyFace application free for use, free for download for the consumers. And then we plan to, like I mentioned, to put the PaybyFace components for the face recognition biometric portion, embed them into the banking applications right now, and that's what I'm trying to work on to see if we can get that going so that we can go under the covers and already have a certified, banking app with our biometric functionality embedded. There's going to be an optional setup fee for merchants if they want to onboard with our point of sale system for their processing, kind of like a Square, iPad app. And then the Bank Connect developer portal for the fintech community, if they want access to an aggregated API, already scalable, throttled. It's doing all the auditing and all the billing automatically for the multiple bank APIs, so they don't have to mess with managing so many APIs. That's going to be just like the App Store with $99 a year for a developer license, and it'll be phased out depending on how many transactions you want to buy. You can start with like 10,000, or you can go up to 100,000, or however many you need, and the cost will be per transaction at that point. But basically, Bank Connect platform, for processing a transaction, our costs are 5 cents flat fee for every transaction on Bank Connect. Because of our AWS ultra scalable system, our transaction for infrastructure costs are fractions of a penny for a transaction. And so because of serverless Lambda, I don't have infrastructure costs. I basically just pay for the milliseconds that the command is in the cloud, and then I don't pay for it anymore. And everything that goes along with that payload gets destroyed along with it. So there is no trace. It all depends on the banking infrastructure for keeping track of all the processing. So basically, we're just a lightweight gateway, and that's why it's so scalable. Next. So we're two teams, right? Two partners. I have, like I mentioned, almost 18 years of entrepreneurship, software engineering experience. I've launched companies in India, Canada, Mexico, United States. I've lost track how many I've started. And I met Radu Jobutan. I know he's worked at Becere. He was one of the first people here in Romania to start implementing POS systems. And he's got almost 10 years of merchant acquiring sales, relationship management, card products management. So we make a pretty good team with the product and engineering side. And just recently, I applied to the Loft, the Luxembourg House of Financial Technology. I went there to go pitch, and I paid them a visit, and they accepted me into the Loft as a fellow member. So that's going to open up some really wonderful business opportunities there. Next. So I don't know if this video is going to work, but if there's internet, we can click on the YouTube, and you can see kind of the concept of walking into a store like a Carrefour, and how the PaybyFace app would work, or the embedded portion into anybody else's app would work. Do we have YouTube? You can just search PaybyFace on YouTube, and you'll see all bunch of videos. So basically, we have, just like we were mentioning earlier, there's a KYC process where you scan your bulletin ID, you scan your bank card, and that's part of your onboarding. Then you can self-service that part, or you can go into a branch and we can do a KYC process at the branch, or at the bank branch, and that generates your account. And can you pause it for a second, because I want to mention something. So our face recognition algorithm, because of GDPR, we don't send the photos anywhere. The photos actually get transferred, hashed. For any techies out there, they get hashed into basically a very lightweight payload that's unidentifiable. And it's that payload, which is the matrix of 80 points on your face. That's the payload that gets sent to the servers to match with other payloads. It's kind of like your personal key, like your social security or Chinipe. And so it's an unidentifiable number. And so we don't process the photos. Everything is processed locally on the phone in real time. And once the match is done with your real face and the embedded token, then that sends the authorization to Bank Connect to do the processing after that. So we don't move pictures through the cloud. We don't store them on any server anywhere. It's all processed locally.
Okay. Mike, unfortunately, time is out. Let's take one question.
Yeah, that's it. That's the last of it. So it's just the demo, but we can let that run and have questions.
Question: Do you have a limit on the database faces? As I know, there are 100,000 faces where the system is reliable, and after that, it can produce errors.
So like I mentioned, it's not a central database for that. It's a process locally with your real face and your initial KYC process data. So the matching is done locally on the face. It doesn't have to go to some server to match you against a whole bunch of database, a whole bunch of photos. It's in your real-time face versus what the phone had original setup, and that's quick.
You authorized on your mobile?
Yeah, you authorize it on your mobile. You just use your own mobile device for the authorization authentication part. And then that gives you grants you access into Bank Connect. And Bank Connect is separated into two APIs, your auth API and your data API. And so your auth API receives the authentication from your mobile device that you are the person who you say you are. And that gives you a temporary data token to use to call the data APIs for all the banks.
For online transactions, for online deals.
So the PaybyFace component can be embedded in mobile devices and mobile apps, like native mobile apps, Android, iOS, but it can also be built into a browser. Yeah, so you could tokenize and extract your authentication on mobile payments using face recognition at point of purchase.
There is no risk to use a picture?
No, because it's liveliness. So your face moves like real faces move, and if I don't detect motion in the points, then it's not liveliness and it doesn't pass.
How do you get the value of the purchase?
The value of the purchase that's going to be. So let's say we're pretending we're at Carrefour. And Carrefour, you have the self-checkout lanes. So you buy the milk or whatever, and you go to the self-checkout lanes, and there's going to be a QR code. The QR code is the initiator. So you scan the QR code, and that ties me into to the lane or to the POS system. And so I know GPS, I know time of transaction, I know the amount, and based on the video, there's an option to choose the value of the amount. And with that third step, I know that you're there validating the total amount that you just saw on the screen. And so with these 3 points, I can tie you into the pending transaction.